The sun hung like a vengeful eye in the Montana sky as Willa Blackwood trudged the final miles toward what she hoped was salvation. Her parched lips cracked with each labored breath, her once fine dress now little more than tattered rags clinging to her famished frame. Freedom had cost her everything, but she would pay the price 1,000 times over to escape the nightmare she'd left behind. Garrett Hayes wiped sweat from his brow as he hammered the final fence post into place. His ranch, modest though it was, represented 5 years of backbreaking work and stubborn determination. As he collected his tools, a movement at the edge of his property caught his attention. A figure wavered like a mirage against the golden horizon, stumbling forward before crumpling to the ground just beyond his newly completed fence line. He didn't hesitate. Dropping his hammer, Garrett sprinted across the dry earth, dust billowing behind him. As he approached, he saw it was a woman, her chestnut hair matted with dust and her skin reddened from days in the merciless sun. She lay unnervingly still, one arm outstretched toward his land as if reaching for salvation. "Madam?" Garrett knelt beside her, gently turning her over. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes the color of summer sage before they rolled back. Without another thought, he slid his arms beneath her frighteningly light body and lifted her against his chest. The year was 1873, and in the Montana Territory, a stranger in need was still cause for immediate action, questions be damned. "Hold on," he murmured, though he doubted she could hear him. His ranch house was nearly a mile away, but Garrett set off at a steady pace, careful not to jostle her too much as he carried her home. His cabin was simple but solid, a testament to his craftsmanship. Shouldering the door open, he carried the unconscious woman to his bed, laying her gently on the quilt his mother had made before he'd left Tennessee. Up close, despite the dirt and obvious exhaustion, he could see she was young, perhaps 25, with delicate features and a strength in her jawline that suggested she wasn't accustomed to surrender. Garrett filled a basin with water and found a clean cloth. With careful movements, he began to wipe the dust from her face, revealing skin that, though sunburned, spoke of someone unaccustomed to harsh outdoor labor. Her hands, however, told a different story. They were raw and blistered. Whatever journey had brought her to collapse at his fence line had not been easy. As he worked, her eyes suddenly flew open, wide with panic. She gasped and tried to sit up, scrambling away from him until her back hit the wall. "Easy now," Garrett said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe. I found you collapsed outside my property. You need water and rest." The woman stared at him, her chest heaving with rapid breaths. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "My ranch, about 15 miles outside of Copper Creek. I'm Garrett Hayes." He slowly reached for the cup of water he'd prepared and offered it to her. "Small sips. You look like you've been without for a while." Her trembling hands accepted the cup, and she followed his instruction, taking measured sips rather than gulping the water as he suspected she wanted to. A sign of discipline, or perhaps previous experience with dehydration. "Willa," she finally said, lowering the cup. "Willa Blackwood." "Well, Miss Blackwood, you're welcome to rest here until you're recovered. I don't make it a habit of questioning folks who come my way, but I admit I'm curious what brings a woman alone to the edge of nowhere." Her eyes, now alert despite her exhaustion, assessed him carefully. "I'm trying to reach Helena. I have family there." The lie was evident in the slight falter of her voice, but Garrett chose not to press. "Helena's still a good 80 miles northwest. Not a journey to take without provisions or a horse." He stood, keeping a respectful distance. "I've got some stew on the stove. Think you could manage a few bites?" Willa nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I don't have much to offer in return for your kindness." "Not asking for anything," he replied simply. "Out here you help when help's needed. Rest now. Food will be ready soon." As Garrett moved to the small stove in the corner of his one-room cabin, he could feel her eyes following him. The mystery of her arrival would have to wait. For now, it was enough that she was alive, and that whatever had driven her to such desperate straits hadn't claimed her life before she reached his fence line. Willa watched the broad-shouldered man as he moved about the cabin with surprising grace for his size. Her instincts for danger, honed sharp over the past year, remained silent in his presence. Still, trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. As soon as she regained her strength, she would need to continue her journey. The ghost of Peter Rhodes would not rest until he found her, and she refused to bring his vengeance down upon this stranger who had shown her kindness. The meal was simple venison stew with potatoes and carrots, but to Willa, it was a feast fit for royalty. She forced herself to eat slowly, savoring each bite, knowing her shrunken stomach would rebel if she indulged too quickly. "How long have you lived here?" she asked, breaking the silence that had settled between them. Garrett sat at the small table across from the bed, respectfully keeping his distance. "Coming up on 5 years. Came out after the war, looking for something that was mine alone." "You fought?" The question slipped out before she could consider its propriety. He nodded once, his expression unchanged though something flickered in his eyes. "Union. Tennessee Regiment. Not something I care to recall most days." "I'm sorry," Willa said softly. "My father and brother fought as well. Only my father returned." A shared understanding passed between them, a momentary bridge across the chasm of their different circumstances. For the first time in months, Willa felt the faint stirring of connection to another human being. "You should rest," Garrett said, standing to take her empty bowl. "I'll bed down by the fire. We can talk more tomorrow, if you're feeling stronger." "Mr. Hayes?" Willa called as he turned away. "I truly am grateful. Most men would not have." She trailed off, unable to articulate the horrors her imagination had conjured when she'd first felt herself being lifted from the ground. "Most men should be better than they are," he replied simply. "Sleep well, Miss Blackwood." That night, despite the safety of 4 walls and the steady breathing of her rescuer across the room, Willa's dreams were haunted by the sound of hoofbeats and a voice that promised she would never truly escape. Morning brought clarity, and the unmistakable realization that she couldn't stay. Willa awoke to find Garrett already gone from the cabin, though a pot of coffee sat warming on the stove and a clean dress too large but serviceable had been laid at the foot of the bed with a note explaining it had belonged to his late mother. The kindness brought unexpected tears to her eyes. After washing as best she could with the basin of fresh water he'd left, Willa dressed and stepped outside, shielding her eyes against the brilliant Montana morning. The ranch was modest but meticulously maintained: a small barn, a corral with 3 horses, a chicken coop, and garden plots showing the first spring vegetables. Beyond the immediate yard stretched pastureland where a small herd of cattle grazed, and further still, the rolling foothills that gradually gave way to mountains. She spotted Garrett at the corral, working with a young horse that danced nervously at the end of a long lead rope. His movements were patient, his voice a steady murmur that, while indistinct at this distance, clearly had a calming effect on the animal. Willa remained by the door, unwilling to disturb the scene until the horse finally stepped forward, nuzzling Garrett's outstretched hand. Only then did he look up, noticing her presence. He smiled a quick, genuine expression that transformed his weathered face and secured the horse before walking toward her. "Morning," he called. "Coffee's hot if you want some. How are you feeling?" "Better," Willa admitted. "Thank you for the dress. I'll find a way to repay your kindness." Garrett waved away her words. "It was just gathering dust. My mother would be pleased it's found use again." He gestured toward the house. "Come. You need more than coffee if you're to regain your strength." Over a breakfast of eggs and biscuits, Willa found herself sharing fragments of her story: how she'd come west as a governess for a wealthy family in Virginia City, omitting the circumstances that had forced her to flee. Garrett listened without interruption, seeming to understand there were gaps she chose not to fill. "Helena's still a fair journey," he said when she finished. "The stage passes through Copper Creek twice a week. Day after tomorrow, I could take you into town." The offer was generous, but 2 days meant 2 more days for Peter to narrow the distance between them. "I've imposed enough, it's no imposition," Garrett cut in gently. "And forgive my bluntness, but you're in no condition to travel alone. 2 days of rest and proper meals will make all the difference." Willa wanted to argue, but exhaustion still weighed heavy in her bones. 2 days, she agreed reluctantly. "But I insist on earning my keep while I'm here." A spark of amusement lit his eyes. "Fair enough. Can you cook?" "Better than most," she replied with unexpected pride. "Then we have an arrangement. I provide shelter and safe passage to town. You ensure I don't poison myself with my own cooking for 2 days. He extended his hand across the table. "Agreed?" His hand was warm and calloused as it enveloped hers, and for the briefest moment, Willa felt an inexplicable sense of safety. "Agreed, Mr. Hayes." "Garrett," he corrected. "If you're cooking my meals, I reckon we can dispense with formalities." "Garrett," she repeated, the name feeling strangely comfortable on her lips. "Then you must call me Willa." The first day passed in a gentle rhythm of work and recovery. True to her word, Willa took over the kitchen, finding unexpected joy in transforming Garrett's simple provisions into more flavorful meals. When not cooking, she sat in the shade of the porch, mending a shirt he'd torn while working, watching as he moved between tasks with the steady pace of a man accustomed to handling everything alone. By evening, though her body still ached, Willa felt more like herself than she had in weeks. Over supper, she found herself asking questions about the ranch, about Garrett's plans to expand his cattle herd, about the challenges of carving a life from this wild country. His answers were thoughtful but modest, revealing a man of intelligence who preferred to let his actions speak louder than his words. "Why no wife?" The question slipped out unbidden, and Willa immediately regretted it. "I apologize. That was inexcusably forward." Rather than taking offense, Garrett seemed to consider the question seriously. "Haven't found a woman willing to share this life, I suppose? It's not an easy one." He glanced around the cabin. "Not much to offer besides hard work and solitude." "There's peace here," Willa said softly. "That's not nothing." Their eyes met across the table, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits who understood the value of sanctuary. The second day dawned with a change in the air, a coolness that hinted at approaching rain. Garrett announced he needed to secure some equipment and check on the herd before the weather turned, asking if Willa would be comfortable alone for a few hours. "I've managed alone most of my life," she assured him with a smile. "Go tend to your ranch." Once alone, Willa took the opportunity to thoroughly clean the cabin, finding satisfaction in repaying Garrett's kindness in this small way. As she worked, she discovered little insights into the man who had rescued her, books well worn from repeated reading, letters from his mother tied with string and tucked reverently in a drawer, a carved wooden box containing a soldier's medal, and a faded photograph of a younger Garrett standing beside another man in uniform, their resemblance marking them as brothers. Outside, the sky darkened prematurely as storm clouds gathered. Willa had just finished preparing a stew for the evening meal when the first heavy drops began to fall. She moved to the porch, watching as the rain transformed the landscape, bringing with it the rich scent of wet earth and the distant rumble of thunder. Concern began to gnaw at her as the rain intensified with no sign of Garrett. Just as she was debating whether to venture out to look for him, a figure on horseback emerged through the curtain of rain, riding hard toward the cabin. Relief flooded through her until she realized the approaching rider was too slight to be Garrett. Fear, her constant companion these past months, returned with brutal force. Willa retreated into the cabin, frantically searching for a weapon. Her hand closed around the handle of Garrett's hunting knife just as hoofbeats thundered into the yard. The door burst open, revealing a boy no older than 16, soaked to the skin and wild-eyed. "Are you Miss Blackwood?" he demanded breathlessly. Willa clutched the knife tighter. "Who's asking?" "I'm Tommy Miller. I work at the Miller spread next valley over. Mr. Hayes sent me." The boy's words tumbled out in a rush. "There was an accident." The creek's flooding, and Mr. Hayes got caught helping move some stranded cattle. His horse spooked at lightning and threw him. He's hurt bad. Asking for you. The knife clattered to the table as Willa's blood ran cold. Where is he? Our ranch. Pa and the hands got him inside, but he wouldn't let us ride for the doctor until we came for you first. Said you needed to know he wouldn't be back to take you to town tomorrow. Even injured, Garrett's first thought had been for her safety and their arrangement. The realization struck Willa with unexpected force. Wait here, she commanded, already moving to gather supplies. I'm coming with you. The boy looked ready to argue. Miss, it's pouring something fierce, and I said I'm coming, Willa repeated, her tone brooking no argument as she wrapped herself in Garrett's spare oilskin coat. Now, do you have a horse for me, or am I riding double with you? 10 minutes later, they were galloping through the downpour, Willa clinging to the saddle of a borrowed mare, focused solely on reaching Garrett. The journey passed in a blur of rain and mud, her mind conjuring increasingly terrible images of what might await her. The Miller ranch was larger than Garrett's, with a proper 2-story farmhouse glowing with lamplight against the stormy twilight. As they dismounted, a stocky man with graying hair hurried from the porch to help them. You must be the woman Garrett was fretting about, he said, assessing her with kind eyes. I'm Joseph Miller. My wife's tending to him inside. How badly is he hurt? Willa asked, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. Joseph's expression grew grave. Broken leg for certain. Possible ribs too. Took a nasty knock to the head when the horse threw him. He was conscious when we found him, but he's been drifting in and out since we got him here. Willa followed him into the house, where the warmth and scent of beeswax candles provided stark contrast to the wild elements outside. Mrs. Miller, a round-faced woman with capable hands, met them in the hall. He's asking for you again, poor soul, she told Willa. This way. Garrett lay on a bed in a small guest room, his face ashen against the white pillowcase. A bandage circled his head, spotted with blood, and his right leg was splinted with what looked like broomsticks and torn sheets. When Willa entered, his eyes flickered open, unfocused at first before settling on her face. Willa, he whispered, relief evident in his voice. You're safe. She moved to his bedside, taking his hand between hers. Of course I'm safe, you foolish man. It's you who's gotten yourself half killed. Despite her attempt at lightness, tears threatened to spill from her eyes. Stage comes tomorrow, he murmured, clearly struggling to stay conscious. Promise to get you to town. Hush now, Willa said firmly. I'm not going anywhere until I know you're recovering properly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips before his eyes drifted closed again. Mrs. Miller appeared at Willa's side with a bowl of warm water and clean cloths. The doctor's been sent for, but with this storm, it could be morning before he arrives, she explained. We've done what we can for now. Willa nodded, already rolling up her sleeves. Show me what needs to be done. I'm not unfamiliar with sick rooms. Through the long night, as rain lashed against the windows and thunder rolled across the valley, Willa remained at Garrett's side. She bathed his fevered brow, coaxed water between his lips when he was conscious, and spoke softly to him when nightmares seemed to grip him in delirium. Each time he surfaced to awareness, his first word was her name, his hand seeking hers as if to reassure himself she remained. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving behind a wash-clean world and a sky of perfect blue. The doctor arrived shortly after sunrise, a gruff older man who examined Garrett with efficient precision. Broken tibia, 2 cracked ribs and a concussion, he announced after his examination. He's a lucky man. Could have been far worse. He glanced at Willa, noting her exhausted face. You've done well keeping the fever down. Are you his wife? No, Willa answered, suddenly aware of how intimate her vigil must appear. I'm a friend. He helped me when I needed it. The doctor's expression remained neutral. Well, friend, he'll need proper care for at least 6 weeks. That leg needs complete rest to heal correctly. After the doctor departed, leaving behind instructions and laudanum for the pain, Mrs. Miller insisted Willa rest. You look dead on your feet, dear. Garrett will still be here after you've had some sleep. Reluctantly, Willa allowed herself to be led to another guest room, where she collapsed onto the bed without even removing her shoes. Her last conscious thought was that the stage to Helena would be departing without her. She slept deeply for the first time in months, waking disoriented as afternoon sunlight streamed through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, panic seized her before memory returned the storm, Garrett's accident, her decision to stay. Quickly washing her face and smoothing her hair, Willa hurried back to Garrett's room. He was awake, propped against pillows, his color markedly improved though pain still etched lines around his eyes. When she entered, his face brightened visibly. "There you are," he said. "Mrs. Miller said you stayed up all night with me." Willa moved to the chair beside his bed, oddly self-conscious now that immediate danger had passed. "It was the least I could do after you risked yourself saving those cattle." "Foolish risk," he admitted. "Should have let them fend for themselves once the creek started rising." "Why didn't you?" His eyes, clear now despite his injuries, held hers steadily. "Because living means making choices. Sometimes the right choice isn't the safe one." The words resonated deeply within Willa, echoing her own desperate flight from Virginia City. She had chosen danger over safety because staying would have meant a different kind of death, the slow suffocation of her spirit under Peter's increasingly possessive control. "The stage left this morning," Garrett continued quietly. "I'm sorry I couldn't keep my promise." Willa found herself reaching for his hand, a gesture that already felt natural. "There will be other stages." "You're staying?" Hope and concern warred in his expression. "What about your family and Helena?" The lie she told hung between them. Willa took a deep breath, making a decision. "There is no family in Helena. I was running from someone. A man who believes he owns me. I thought distance would be my salvation." Garrett's hand tightened around hers. "Tell me," he said simply. And so she did. She told him about coming west as a governess, about meeting Peter Rhodes, a wealthy widower whose initial kindness had concealed a nature that grew increasingly controlling. How his proposals of marriage had turned to threats when she refused him, how his influence in Virginia City had made escape nearly impossible, until she'd seized an opportunity during a business trip he'd taken to Helena. "He'll be looking for me," she finished. "That's why I can't stay in one place too long. I won't bring that danger to your door after all you've done for me." Garrett was silent for a long moment after she finished. 6 weeks, he finally said. "What?" "The doctor says I'll need 6 weeks to heal enough to work the ranch properly." "Stay that long? Help me recover, help with the essential chores I can't manage. By then, this Rhodes fellow will have moved on, or I'll be well enough to help you face him." His eyes held hers, unwavering. "I'm not proposing charity, Willa. I need the help, and you need sanctuary. It's a fair arrangement." Willa knew she should refuse. Every day she remained increased the risk that Peter would track her down. And yet, the thought of continuing her flight alone held no appeal when measured against these past days of unexpected connection. 6 weeks, she agreed softly. "Though I think you're getting the worse end of this bargain." Garrett's smile transformed his face, despite the bandages and bruises. "I doubt that very much, Willa Blackwood." The days that followed established a new rhythm to Willa's life. The Millers insisted Garrett remain at their ranch until he could be safely transported home, and Willa divided her time between nursing him and learning the essential tasks needed to maintain his ranch in his absence. Joseph Miller's son Tommy rode with her daily to feed Garrett's livestock and tend to the most pressing chores, teaching her what he could about ranch operations. To her surprise, Willa found she enjoyed the work, the physical demands of it, the tangible results of her efforts, the growing confidence in her own capabilities. Each evening, she would return to Garrett's bedside, sharing the day's accomplishments and challenges, finding in him both an attentive listener and a patient teacher. "You have a natural way with the animals," he told her after she described successfully calming his nervous young horse. Most city-raised folk never develop that. I wasn't always city-raised, Willa admitted. My father had a small farm in Pennsylvania before the war. After he and my brother left to fight, Mother and I couldn't maintain it alone. We sold everything and moved to Philadelphia to live with her sister. You never went back? Willa shook her head. Father returned changed. The farm was gone. There was nothing to go back to. She looked down at her hands, now calloused from work. But I've missed the connection to the land, the rhythm of caring for living things. As Garrett's strength returned, their conversations deepened, spanning long evenings where they discovered shared passions for literature, similar views on justice and equality forged in the crucible of war, and complementary senses of humor that often left them laughing until Garrett had to clutch his healing ribs. By the third week, Garrett was well enough to return to his own ranch, though still confined largely to the cabin and porch. The doctor provided crutches, warning against putting weight on the healing leg for at least another 3 weeks. The journey home, made in Joseph Miller's wagon with Willa riding alongside, was painful but welcomed by both of them. Strange to miss a place after such a short absence, Garrett commented as his cabin came into view. But I've been dreaming of my own bed. Willa understood completely. In the weeks since she'd collapsed at his fence line, Garrett's modest ranch had come to represent security in a way no place had since childhood. Together with Joseph and Tommy, they settled Garrett comfortably in the cabin before the Millers departed with promises to check in regularly. Alone together for the first time since the accident, a curious shyness descended. Willa busied herself preparing a meal while Garrett watched from his chair, the domesticity of the scene both foreign and oddly right. I've been thinking, he said as they ate. The north pasture needs fencing before winter. I'd planned to hire help from town, but with medical expenses. I can help, Willa offered immediately. Tommy showed me the basics while you were recovering. Garrett's expression was unreadable. It's hard work, Willa. And not typically women's work. I'm not typical, she replied with more sharpness than intended. And I'm stronger than I look. Unless you object to my help specifically? No, he said quickly. I just don't want you to feel obligated beyond our arrangement. Willa set down her fork. Is that what you think? That I'm helping you out of obligation? Garrett met her gaze, and something shifted in the air between them. Why are you helping me, Willa? The question hung in the silence. Because I care for you, she thought. Because in these few weeks, you've become more important to me than I ever expected. Because the thought of leaving fills me with a dread that has nothing to do with Peter Rhodes. Because I want to, she said instead. Because helping each other is what decent people do. He nodded slowly, accepting her answer though something in his eyes suggested he'd hoped for more. Then I gratefully accept your help with the fencing, Miss Blackwood. The following days established a new normal. Willa rose early to tend the animals before returning to prepare breakfast. Mornings were spent on household tasks and helping Garrett with exercises the doctor had prescribed to maintain his strength. Afternoons she worked on the fencing project, returning sweaty and exhausted but filled with a sense of accomplishment that she hadn't experienced in years. Evenings were precious, the two of them sharing meals and conversation, sometimes reading aloud from Garrett's collection of books, occasionally venturing to the porch to watch the sunset paint the mountains in impossible colors. Despite his injuries, Garrett found ways to contribute, teaching Willa to play chess, sharing stories of his travels, listening with genuine interest to her dreams and fears. As the 4th week drew to a close, Willa realized with a start that their agreed-upon 6 weeks was rapidly approaching its end. The thought of leaving filled her with a hollow ache that no amount of reasoning could dispel. She had come to love this land, this life, and the man who had created it through sheer determination and honest work. Yet the specter of Peter Rhodes remained. Just the previous week, a trader passing through had mentioned inquiries in Virginia City about a woman matching Willa's description. The threat wasn't imagined, and she couldn't bear the thought of bringing danger to Garrett's door. One evening, As they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk, Willa found the courage to broach the subject. 2 more weeks, she said softly. You'll be able to manage on your own soon. Garrett was silent for a long moment. Yes, he finally agreed, though his tone carried no enthusiasm. Doctor says I can start putting weight on the leg next week. Limited at first, but improving. That's good news. Willa tried to infuse her voice with a brightness she didn't feel. Is it? Garrett turned to face her, his expression serious in the fading light. Are you so eager to continue your journey, Willa? Of course not, she admitted. These weeks have been. I've never felt so at peace. So purposeful. Then stay, he said simply. Willa's heart stuttered in her chest. You know I can't. Peter will keep searching. He's a man used to getting what he wants, and he decided long ago that included me. Let him come, Garrett said, a hint of steel entering his voice. I fought for 4 years to preserve a union I believed in. I can certainly fight for a woman He stopped, seeming to catch himself. A woman you what? Willa barely dared breathe as she waited for his answer. Garrett reached across the space between them, taking her hand in his. A woman I've come to care for more deeply than I thought possible in such a short time. A woman who deserves to choose her own path without fear. Tears pricked Willa's eyes. Garrett, I care for you too. More than I can say. But I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because of me. Nothing will happen to me, he assured her, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. But something is happening to us, Willa. Something rare and worth protecting. In the soft evening light, with the scent of wildflowers carried on the breeze, Willa allowed herself to imagine a future here, seasons changing across the valley, the ranch growing prosperous under their combined care, children perhaps, with Garrett's steady nature and her determination. Think about it, he said, releasing her hand. That's all I ask. Think about staying, not out of fear or obligation, but because this could be home. Because we could build something beautiful together. That night sleep eluded Willa. She lay awake on the small cot Garrett had constructed for her, listening to his steady breathing from across the room, weighing fear against hope, safety against possibility. By dawn, she had made her decision. She found Garrett already awake, sitting at the table with coffee prepared. One look at her face and he knew. You're leaving, he said, the words flat. Not forever, Willa said, taking the seat across from him. I've been thinking all night. You're right that what's growing between us is worth fighting for. But I can't live looking over my shoulder, waiting for Peter to appear. What are you suggesting? Garrett's expression was guarded, as if bracing for heartbreak. I need to end this on my terms. Return to Virginia City, face Peter directly, make it clear to him and everyone that I am not his property and never will be. She reached for Garrett's hand. And then, if you still want me, I'll come back here. Not running from something, but running toward a future I choose. Garrett's fingers tightened around hers. You don't have to face him alone. I do, Willa insisted gently. This is my fight, my past to confront. You've shown me I'm stronger than I knew. Let me prove it to myself most of all. The struggle was evident in his face, the protector in him warring with respect for her autonomy. Finally, he nodded. When? The stage passes tomorrow. I'll be on it. Willa squeezed his hand. And with any luck, I'll be back before your leg is fully healed. That day passed in a haze of preparation and unspoken emotion. Garrett insisted she take his mother's silver locket for protection, pressing it into her palm with such earnestness that Willa couldn't refuse. She, in turn, left him with a letter to be opened only if she didn't return within a month, a letter that contained all the words of love she hadn't yet found the courage to speak aloud. Their parting the next morning was subdued, heavy with things unsaid. As the stage approached, visible in the distance as a cloud of dust on the road to town, Garrett pulled Willa close. Come back to me, he whispered against her hair. Whatever happens, just come back. I will, she promised, memorizing the feel of his arms around her, the scent of him leather and pine and something uniquely Garrett. Wait for me. The journey to Virginia City passed in a blur of dust and determination. Willa rehearsed what she would say to Peter, how she would stand her ground, drawing strength from the memory of Garrett's faith in her. The silver locket rested against her heart, a tangible reminder of what awaited her if she succeeded. Virginia City appeared much as she had left it, a bustling mining town with pretensions of permanence. Willa checked into a respectable hotel under her own name, making no attempt to hide her return. If Peter was still searching for her, word would reach him quickly enough. It took less than a day. She was dining alone in the hotel restaurant when a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Peter Rhodes stood perfectly still, his expensive suit and silver-tipped cane marking him as a man of wealth and influence. His eyes, cold and possessive, fixed on her across the room. Willa's heart hammered against her ribs, but she didn't flinch. Deliberately, she finished her meal, paid her bill, and walked directly toward him, stopping just out of arm's reach. "Hello, Peter," she said calmly. "I believe we have matters to discuss." His surprise at her directness was evident. "Indeed we do, my dear. Perhaps somewhere more private?" "No," Willa replied firmly. "Whatever you have to say to me can be said here, in public, where others can witness it." Anger flashed across his handsome features before he schooled them into a solicitous expression. "Willa, you've been missed. Your sudden departure caused quite a stir. I've been concerned for your safety." "My safety was precisely why I left," she said, keeping her voice level. "Your concern had become something much darker, Peter. Your proposals turned to threats. Your attention became surveillance. I left because you gave me no choice." His smile tightened. "You exaggerate. I merely wished to protect what was mine." "That's the problem," Willa said, aware they were drawing attention from other diners. "I was never yours. I am my own person, free to choose my own path. I've come back only to make this perfectly clear. I do not accept your proposal. I do not welcome your attention. I wish to live my life without your interference." Peter stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're making a scene, my dear. Think carefully about what you're doing. I have influence in this territory. I can make life very difficult for you." "You already have," Willa replied. "And yet here I stand. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Peter." His facade cracked, revealing the cold anger beneath. "You will regret this defiance. No one rejects Peter Rhodes without consequences." "Is that a threat, Mr. Rhodes?" The new voice came from behind Peter. A tall man in a marshal's uniform stepped forward, his expression stern. "Because it sounded remarkably like one to me." Peter straightened, adjusting his posture to one of injured dignity. "Marshal Davis, this is a private matter between myself and Miss Blackwood." "Not anymore," the marshal replied. "Not when threats are made in a public establishment." He turned to Willa. "Miss, has this man been harassing you?" Willa took a deep breath. "Yes, Marshal. Mr. Rhodes has been pursuing me unwanted for months. When I refused his proposals, he threatened to ruin my reputation and employment prospects. I fled town to escape his attention, and he has been searching for me since." The marshal's gaze hardened as he turned back to Peter. "Mr. Rhodes, consider this an official warning. Any further unwanted contact with Miss Blackwood will result in charges of harassment. Additionally, I'll be looking into these claims of intimidation. Your standing in this community won't protect you from the law." Peter's face flushed with humiliation and rage. "This is absurd. She's clearly hysterical enough." The marshal cut him off. "Go home, Mr. Rhodes. Now." For a moment, it seemed Peter might argue further, but the public nature of his dressing down had clearly rattled him. With a final venomous glance at Willa, he turned and stalked from the restaurant. The marshal turned to Willa with a kinder expression. "My wife mentioned concerns about your situation before you left town. She teaches at the school where you worked. I wish you'd come to me sooner." Relief washed over Willa. "Thank you, Marshal. I didn't think anyone would believe me over him. Times are changing, Miss Blackwood. Slowly, perhaps, but changing nonetheless. He tipped his hat. Will you be staying in Virginia City? Willa thought of Garrett waiting for her, of the ranch becoming more beautiful with each passing season, of the life they might build together. No, she said with certainty. I only came back to face what I was running from. My future lies elsewhere. 3 days later, Willa boarded the stage heading back toward Copper Creek, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The confrontation with Peter had been followed by a formal complaint filed with the marshal, supported by testimonies from 2 other women who had experienced similar intimidation from him. The marshal had assured her that Rhodes would face consequences for his actions, perhaps not as severe as he deserved, but enough to ensure he would think twice before pursuing her or anyone else so aggressively. More importantly, Willa had reclaimed her power. She was no longer running in fear but moving purposefully toward a future of her own choosing. The locket Garrett had given her rested against her skin, a constant reminder of what waited ahead. The journey seemed interminable, each mile stretching her patience. When the stage finally reached Copper Creek, Willa could barely contain herself long enough to arrange for a horse to take her the remaining distance to Garrett's ranch. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent when she crested the final hill and saw the cabin below, smoke rising cheerfully from the chimney. Her heart leapt at the sight of a familiar figure on the porch, Garrett standing with the aid of a cane, his attention fixed on her approach. She urged her horse faster, covering the remaining distance at a gallop. By the time she reached the yard, Garrett had made his way to the bottom of the porch steps, his expression a mixture of hope and disbelief. Willa barely waited for her horse to stop before dismounting, crossing the remaining distance between them in a few quick strides. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him, mindful of his healing injuries but unable to restrain the joy of reunion. You came back, Garrett murmured against her hair, his arms tightening around her. I promised I would, Willa replied, pulling back just enough to see his face. I've finished running, Garrett. I've faced my past, and now I'm ready for my future if that future still includes you. In answer, Garrett lowered his head, capturing her lips in a kiss that spoke of longing, relief, and a love that had grown steadily despite the brevity of their acquaintance. Willa melted into him, returning the kiss with equal fervor, pouring into it all the words she hadn't yet spoken. When they finally parted, breathless and smiling, Garrett pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, Willa Blackwood. These weeks without you confirmed what I already knew: my life is better with you in it. This ranch, this land? None of it means as much without you to share it. Tears of joy spilled down Willa's cheeks. I love you too. When I imagined my future, all I could see was here with you, building something beautiful together. Garrett took her hand, leading her toward the cabin that already felt like home. Then let's begin, he said simply. We have a lifetime ahead of us. In the years that followed, the Hayes ranch flourished under their combined care. Garrett's strength returned fully, and together they expanded both the cattle operation and the homestead itself. The one-room cabin grew to accommodate their changing needs, first a proper bedroom, then a larger kitchen where Willa experimented with recipes that became legendary in the territory, and eventually, a nursery for the children who arrived to complete their family. The fence line where Willa had collapsed that fateful day became marked with a small stone cairn, a reminder of endings that became beginnings, of the mysterious ways fate worked to bring together 2 souls who might otherwise never have met. On summer evenings, long after the children were grown with families of their own, Garrett and Willa could still be found sitting together on the porch, their hands entwined as they watched the sunset paint the mountains in gold and crimson. Those who knew them spoke of a love that had only deepened with time, a love born in crisis, tested by separation, and proven unshakable through the passing decades. Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been? Willa asked one such evening, her silver-streaked hair catching the last rays of sunlight. If I hadn't collapsed exactly where I did, if you hadn't been working on that fence that particular day. Garrett's weathered hand squeezed hers gently. I think some souls are meant to find each other, no matter the circumstances. We might have taken a different path, but I believe we would have found our way to each other eventually. Willa rested her head against his shoulder, contentment settling around them like a familiar blanket. I'm glad it was this path, she murmured. I wouldn't change a single step that led me to you. As twilight deepened into night, stars emerged above the ranch that had witnessed their journey from strangers to soulmates. The fence line that had once marked a boundary between desperation and hope now encircled a legacy of love, a testament to two people who had found in each other not just sanctuary, but home.